November the 9th, 2023. Guys, there's information coming out of Israel now in the Middle East, and we've been talking about in the other videos, as well as a lot of other media sources, the fact that there needs to be a humanitarian corridor set up to get the non-combatants out of the situation there in Gaza. Now, the IDF troops have completely surrounded the northern section of Gaza, which includes Gaza City, and they're saying they're tightening the band. I'm sure they're just moving towards the city, or the center of the city now, and they're taking out tunnels and looking for ammunition stashes, things like that. But now yesterday they had a 3-hour corridor, and I think they ended up extending it for about an hour, and they're getting people to move south. Now, what has happened today, and I think Israel has agreed to it now, is that there will be this 4-hour per day pause in bombing and shelling and attacking. It should come from both sides because it's been agreed to, and it's been a lot of pressure put on Israel from this, including from the U.S., which is concerning because of all the other things going on. But anyway, so now it looks like there's going to be a 4-hour per day pause in military activity to support this. Now, I don't know how this will bottleneck it. The article doesn't talk about it. But if you figure 4 hours and how many people can get through into southern Gaza, in that 4 hours, I'm not sure, but you're still dealing with over 1 million people, I think, in the area. I think 100,000 may have went through yesterday. That's according to some reports. It's hard to get real accurate information there because it's really dangerous for journalists. And I think almost 100 UN workers have been killed since the start of this. Also, there may be some information coming out. I don't know if it will hit mainstream media in the U.S., once it is verified, but it could be very damaging to the IDF, because if you guys remember, some of the first videos that came out from October 7th on that day it looked like something had came down the highway, and there were cars pulled off to the left and right, guys, and a lot of them were burned, and it looked like a helicopter or something, maybe a jet, came through there attacking vehicles. It didn't look like people were being stopped, and the cars were, that much damage was being done to the cars. I know a lot of videos are out there, and I've seen some to where the infiltrators from Hamas were stopping cars and shooting the people inside them. And I saw some of those videos even after it happened. Most of you did too, where cars were stopped along the highway. But the ones I'm talking about, it was mass damage down through these areas. And this occurred right after it happened. And again, it looks like some type of airship attack. Doesn't look like ground troops did what that damage was. And now there's going to be some very interesting video coming out about what happened there, guys. It could change a lot. It will definitely change the way things are being done in Israel. But we're going to have to wait and see if it comes to mainstream media or not, and if it's completely verified. I have seen the video. I'm not going to post it here. It would definitely be the end of the channel, and we want to make sure it's verified. But as soon as it is, we'll put some links up to it. You can find it at a few sources. Anyway, we'll just have to wait and see. But they're saying Israel has agreed to put in place the 4-hour daily humanitarian pauses in its assault on Hamas in northern Gaza starting today. Again, this says daily, but yesterday it was just maybe a trial run. I'm not sure, and maybe there's been a few hours before that. But anything's better than nothing. You've got a lot of people, guys, approaching 11,000 that are dead from the Gaza side, and then you're still dealing with, I think, 1,400, maybe more than that they know of on the Israeli side. But the U.S. said Thursday there was no possibility of a formal ceasefire at the moment, and said it had taken a little longer than it hoped for Israel to agree to the humanitarian pauses. The U.S. had asked Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to institute the daily pauses during a Monday call, and said he had also asked the Israelis for a pause for at least 3 days to allow for negotiations over the release of some hostages held by Hamas. Now, there's been a lot of media talking about the U.S. and other nations have been pushing for a ceasefire. But strangely enough, in the UN vote a couple of days ago, the U.S. was one of the ones that voted no to a ceasefire. Just saying, you can look that up look it up for the United Nations votes. And the U.S. is saying, and they're saying Biden said it, but when asked whether he had asked Israel for a 3-day pause, he said, I've asked for even a longer pause for some of them. But anyway, it's a start, and it could possibly allow more aid to get to the folks that are moving into South Gaza. But it looks like northern Gaza is going to be a heap of rubble from some of the videos that you're seeing and some of the still images. Of course, a lot of that is on warnews247.gr. GR's for Greek, and maybe you'll get the pop down translations. I think a lot of software has it now. And there's something else that I'm noticing, and I'm pretty sure most of you have. It's not just here in the U.S., but it's in every nation, but it's a great divide being created basically by what I guess you would term a religious war. You've got Democrats in the U.S. turning against each other. And that's, because they have hit a nerve, guys. This war has hit a nerve because of the response by Israel after the attack by Hamas. It's hit a nerve with everyone. And so, regardless if you're a Democrat, Republican, you're either for Israel or you're for a ceasefire or you're for Hamas or somewhere in between there. And so that is what we're starting to see. House Representative Rashida Tlaib was censored yesterday, I think, over her Israeli Hamas rhetoric. Okay, she's pro-Hamas. But what we're seeing is a division by a religious situation that looks very much like some of the stuff that comes from the Albert Pike information. Now, also the Democrats are split on their approval of Biden and his response to this Hamas war, and that divide goes all the way through every fabric of society around the world. There were major demonstrations, UK, the US, college campuses, and there's going to be on Armistice Day, I think, is in 2 days, on November 11th, the 11th day of the 11th month at the 11th minute. But it's into World War I, if I'm not mistaken, basically, and it ended up being part of here in the U.S. Veterans Day and things like that. I think some of it's celebrated at different times now, but there's already planned demonstrations in the UK on, I guess that would be, today's the night, so you're looking at Saturday, of both pro and anti Israeli and Hamas demonstrations there. Police are really being eyed on this one because the Prime Minister of the UK was pushing for no permits for either side to demonstrate, but the police are allowing the police chief in charge of that area there where some of the big Armistice Day celebrations are held and stuff. He allowed it anyway. And the Prime Minister there told him that the blood will be on his hands. But anyway, we're seeing a divide that more than likely is very much planned. And if that information that I'm talking to you about comes out about what some of the things that were really happening during the first few hours of October 7th, then we may see earthquakes of changes happening in politics and in religion, especially in the Middle East. Continuing on the article, it says similar short-term pauses have occurred over the last several days as tens of thousands of civilians have fled southward, But Thursday's announcement appeared to be an effort to formalize and expand the process as the U.S. has pressured the Israelis to take greater steps to protect the civilians in Gaza. Now, it's a great thing for the people that are still there. It's a sad thing for loss of life on both sides. But this would give, especially if it's certain times, 4 hours starting at 10 or at noon, whatever it is, people will know they will be prepared to make their move south and probably get a lot more organization because of these planned things. Now, the giant object that no one's talking about anywhere that I can find any U.S. information for the Middle East is what happens next. Okay, you get a million or so people to evacuate to the south, which is still coming under some aerial bombardment. Then what? Will Egypt open its arms and let an influx or come out of Gaza into their area? They've already said they weren't going to do it. And Jordan says they're not going to allow for the displacement of the West Bank citizens pushed further into Jordan. And so it's like the big thing is being avoided, that one large question, and that is very, very concerning. It should be for everyone. What happens at that point? Now, I can't look at everything, and if some of you guys in the comments have seen some of the plans, I'd like to hear it. But this great vacuum of information, again, is like a deep, dark hole. And what's going to be very telling for me and for everyone that watches the video and looks at the comments is if anyone at all has any information that's been released on that plan, because, again, that's very important. We don't want to see nobody with a heart wants to see innocent women and children or innocents that are non-combatant get bombed either side. And there's missiles coming in from Hezbollah. They're getting very large now. Plus, information's coming in about Iran and Hezbollah, and Iran has given the Hezbollah troops anti-ship missiles that have long range that can take out carriers in the Mediterranean or anywhere they strike. They've got that kind of range and that kind of power, and I'm not sure how much of the information is that it's coming from Iran is correct, because it looks like from a few reports that it's Russian artillery as well. Now, the only thing that I've heard, and most of you have heard, is that Israel has agreed to a ceasefire. They don't say it's permanent, and that will depend on hostage release. If all the hostages are released, they will consider it, but until that happens, they're not considering it at all, except for these 4-hour windows. It says Israeli officials estimate that militants still hold 239 hostages, including children and the elderly, from an attack that also saw 1,400 Israelis killed. U.S. officials say it believes fewer than 10 Americans are among those held captive, right? But you got to think of the mentality of both sides here. If the Hamas military, if they release all the hostages, then they lose all the bargaining chips. So we don't know how long this will play out. We do know a lot of people need some food and water and medical help in that area. So just keep the innocents in your prayers. And, when people start talking about peace, 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 what happens? But it looks like we're about to be at that point. And, again, some of the information that can't be released now may lead to some of these changes. But we're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.